From Red Zone Weather in Bruton, Alabama, with meteorologist Spinks Meganson. A tropical weather update starts right now.
Tropical storm Ian moving northwest in the Caribbean Sea, strengthening on this Sunday evening, now with maximum winds up to 60 miles per hour. Ian is going to move north in the days ahead, likely approaching the Big Bend region or the Florida Peninsula as a hurricane later in the week. Good Sunday evening to you. I'm meteorologist Spinks Meganson. Hope you are having a nice Sunday evening. Let's get in there and talk about our headline this evening, which is, of course, Tropical Storm Ian, now packing maximum sustained winds of 60 miles per hour. Ian is located in the Caribbean Sea, now to the west of Jamaica, and Ian continues to move to the northwest at about 12 miles per hour. Let's get in there and look at it. First thing I want to do is talk about the current information from the Hurricane Center. The current coordinates for the center of Tropical Storm Ian as of the 8 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time advisory on this Sunday. 17.0 north, 80.8 west, max winds up to 60 miles per hour, and minimum sea level pressure down to 991 millibars. Over the next few days, Ian is going to move to the north, and as it does so, it's going to strengthen. Lots of warm water out here in the southern Gulf of Mexico. We'll talk more about what's happening now in just a minute, but let's talk about what's happening later this week, because that's when Ian is expected to bring impacts to parts of the southeastern United States. Now, this is the latest cone of uncertainty associated with the 8 p.m. advisory, and you can see the western part of the cone is basically at Navarre, and it extends all the way down to Fort Myers in Florida. And so that's where the center of circulation of this storm is expected to move onshore, somewhere in the state of Florida between Navarre and Fort Myers. The models today, in terms of the overall guidance, has continued to shift back to the east, and that trend has continued even into the evening hours. So don't be surprised at the 10 o'clock advisory if the whole thing kind of shifts a bit back to the east. That would be more in line with the latest data that is coming in. And so what that means, if you are in Tampa or Sarasota, Fort Myers, Naples, Cape Coral, Orlando, in the Florida Peninsula, those areas could have significant hurricane impacts later this week, specifically on Wednesday, Thursday, maybe even into Friday for farther inland areas here in Florida, as the center of what will be Hurricane Ian most likely approaches from the southwest. So that's the latest on the cone of uncertainty. Again, probably going to have more of a shift a little bit back to the east this evening. Let's get in there and look at what Ian is doing right now, because the storm continues to strengthen. Earlier today, we kind of went through a weakening cycle very briefly as the convection somewhat collapsed near the center of Ian, but that trend has unfortunately reversed. And this is the high-res GOES satellite imagery over the last hour. And you can see right in through here, the center of circulation, there's been a big burst of convection right on top of the center of circulation. And so what that means is that most likely we could begin to see a rapid intensification period for this storm as a general northwesterly movement continues, basically right down the cone of uncertainty. Again, the storm is moving to the northwest, and so tonight there will be hurricane impacts most likely in parts of the Cayman Islands. Hurricane warning up for Grand Cayman. Also have a hurricane warning up for western Cuba, and also a tropical storm warning in effect for parts of Cuba as well. A tropical storm watch is in effect for parts of the Florida Keys, specifically near Key West, and also for the dry Tortugas. So this is a tropical storm watch, and it's a tropical storm watch because the Keys and the dry Tortugas may have the outer bands of Ian as this thing kind of moves to the west of the Keys. And so again, your center would be potentially somewhere right in through here, but again, dry Tortugas, Key West, now under a tropical storm warning, or excuse me, watch at this point. It's a watch for the Keys. It's a tropical storm warning for parts of Cuba, and a hurricane warning also for western Cuba. Now, let's look at how it may play out in the next few days. Again, there's your cone of uncertainty as of this evening. This is one model. This is the GFS, and if you remember, last night we kind of talked about the global forecast system was one of the more westerly models. The European ECMWF model has been a bit farther to the east. The GFS now beginning to get its act together and move back to the east, and it's kind of becoming more in line with the Euro this evening. And what that means is our friends to our east in the Florida Peninsula may have more significant impacts from this hurricane compared to our local area here in South Alabama and Northwest Florida if the current forecast verifies. Forecast confidence is, by the way, increasing this evening. And I suspect over the next few days, confidence will begin to increase even more on a scenario very similar to what you're seeing here. That look is valid at 7 p.m. Wednesday. This would be the rain shield around the circulation associated with what would be Hurricane Ian at this point. Bad scenario for the Tampa Bay area and areas near Fort Myers up to Cedar Key in the Big Bend region, as we would have strong winds, perhaps up to Category 2, maybe even Category 3 strength, as the system would be offshore at that point. That look is valid at 4 a.m. on Friday. And look at what happens. If this model and if the current forecast guidance is to be believed, that suggests that most, if not all, of the impacts would be to the east of our local area. Red Zone Weather is based in Brewton, Alabama. We cover 9 counties in southwest Alabama, 3 in northwest Florida. That makes up our primary coverage area. Anytime there's a tornado warning for any part of those 12 counties, we go live on Facebook and across our platforms. And so for our local area specifically, the current forecast indicates that we would dodge a bullet and our friends to the east down in Florida would take the brunt of this developing tropical system that is currently Tropical Storm Ian. So again, that look is valid Friday at 1 o'clock. This has the landfall point coming in somewhere here in the Big Bend region, perhaps near or north of Cedar Key, near Tallahassee. Keep in mind, yes, indeed, we know the rhyme, the east is the beast and the west is the best. In other words, if you're dealing with a hurricane, you want to be on the western side if you can help it. That's where the winds are coming off of the continent, and generally speaking, impacts are worse on the east side. But I do think places like Apalachicola, Tallahassee, areas near Carabel, also areas here in the Florida Panhandle, basically in areas east of Port St. Joe and Bluntstown and Mariana, those areas could have gusty winds and lots of heavy rain, perhaps upwards of 5-6 inches of rain. So there could be some impacts in the Florida Panhandle region, basically east of, say, the Apalachicola River. But it looks like northwest Florida, specifically Escambia, Santa Rosa, Okaloosa, Walton counties in this scenario would be just fine. Now, don't get me wrong, there's going to be rip currents and high waves at our local beaches, no doubt about it. But in terms of land impacts, largely limited under this forecast scenario. So again, if the current guidance is to be believed, most of the impacts well to our east. We could have changes, and we can't let our guard down until this thing gets on shore. Of course, we'll bring you updates every step of the way in the Red Zone Weather app. By the way, again, like we have cautioned over the last several days, hysteria running rampant on social media, but I encourage you, use the official National Hurricane Center forecast. That's what I've been showing you over the last several minutes when we showed the cone of uncertainty in that graphic system. Same thing here. Hurricanes.gov always has the very latest information. And so that's the cone of uncertainty. Really, really good stuff here generated by the scientists at the National Hurricane Center with that cone of uncertainty. Elsewhere in the Atlantic Ocean, also watching a tropical wave about halfway between the Lesser Antilles, Puerto Rico, and Africa. That system will not pose a direct threat to the continental United States anytime soon. By the way, we do have some cooler air coming down the pike into South Alabama and Northwest Florida tomorrow. Cold front going to move through, and it looks like highs by Tuesday will be in the mid-80s. Look at those morning lows, probably in the upper 50s inland, closer to 60, closer to the coast. Lower humidity levels coming up midweek. And then we may see a few showers as we go into the latter part of the week, but overall, I think that most of us are going to end up staying dry later in the week. In other words, we've got a few showers in the forecast on Friday into Saturday locally, but I think that we may have to knock down those rain chances barring any, unforeseen significant forecast change associated with Ian. And so high temperature is going to be most likely in the 70s later this week, and that's because of that air rushing down off the continent around the counterclockwise circulation of Ian. And so Highs in the 70s later this week, something to look forward to. And so Tropical Storm Ian, again, gaining strength on this Sunday evening. Max winds up to 60 miles per hour near the center of circulation. Ian will likely be a hurricane, if not tonight, tomorrow, and then probably becoming a major hurricane as the system approaches or passes by western Cuba as this thing emerges into the southern Gulf. NHC, the National Hurricane Center, ramps this up to a Category 4 hurricane with max winds around 130 miles per hour in the southeastern Gulf. And again, that cone of uncertainty has been shifting east today. Wouldn't be shocked to see it shift to the east a bit more in the days ahead. It could shift back west. We're not out of the woods just yet, but the trends certainly have been our friend on this Sunday. I'll have many more updates in the coming hours in the Red Zone Weather app. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments below, and I'll try to get to those in just a little bit. And my next regularly scheduled video will be posted by 7:15 a.m. tomorrow morning on Facebook and in the Red Zone Weather app. I hope you have a phenomenal Sunday evening. We will see you soon.
Be sure to find us across social media, and don't forget to download the free Red Zone Weather app and set up your customized alerts. Please support our Red Zone Weather sponsors who make our coverage possible every single day.